We are going to be discussing violent video games and the effects they have on children's violence and behavioral problems. We're going to go around the room and introduce everybody. I'm Timothy Herman.
I'm Nicole, Knierim.
Sarah, Herman.
Jackie, Herman.
Okay, now we're going to go into questioning. Do you think that video games promote violence in children?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Negative. Okay.
No.
What constitutes violence in video games?
The harming of other characters in the game. Killing.
Like the kicking and hitting and punching.
Shooting and running over and...
What do you think?
I think injuring people, injuring other players or people in the game is what...
Characters.
I think also robbing and any illegal activity. Okay, what is the main reason that you feel that video games do or do not promote violence in children?
Somebody else go.
I think that they do not promote violence in children because it's make-believe and basically it's not real. It's a game. You're going in, you're playing it. It's not based on a real life. It's all fictitious characters. It's a role-playing. Somebody?
Well, I think that it does. What was the question?
What is the main reason that you feel that video games do or do not promote violence in children?
Oh, right. I feel like it does because it desensitizes them and it devalues human life. Once you see people injured and killed all the time, the respect and the value for human life isn't quite at the standard that it should be. And it can teach kids bad habits towards like how they interact and how they view conflict and conflict with other human beings. If every time you're given a situation where there's conflict, if the video game teaches you to punch or, to physically control or to kill, then your thought process might start to get programmed as every time you interact with someone in real life and have a conflict in real life, then physical force is always the best and quickest way to get the outcome that you want.
I do not feel that it promotes violence in children because I think that kids are taught or should be taught right from wrong, and I think that there's violence in all aspects of life, and people have to be able to distinguish the difference between video games and reality.
Okay, well, I believe that kids are starting these games, some of them as early as 2 years, and playing it every day for hours. And I think when you are exposed to that kind of violence every day for that many hours a day, that it's definitely going to promote some violence in children. Either an aggressive behavior or bad behavior or getting into fights or not getting along with a teacher.
I agree. I think whenever you play video games, you're already removing yourself from normal social interactions with other children, so you're already kind of not getting the socialization that you need. And then the interaction that you do view between humans is in the violent video games. And so again, you're being programmed to deal with situations in a negative manner.
Yeah, but you should still know the difference between right and wrong, and you should not be taught to use violence in the real world.
Well, we all get taught right from wrong, but people still get put in situations where they have to make a choice. And whenever all of your past influences have been negative, then even if you know it's wrong, that may still be how you're programmed to react.
I still disagree, but we'll move on. What is the difference between observing violence in other areas of life, such as news, television, or movies, than video games?
I don't think there is any difference. I think that if kids, they watch a movie with real people and witness violence, it seems like they would be more inclined to pick that up than something from an animated video game. So I just don't think that I think kids have to just know the difference. I don't think that there's going to be a difference.
Okay, I think the difference is on TV or movies or whatever, they are participating by watching and listening. When it's the video game, they're the person that is in charge of the game, and they are using the buttons to inflict harm to the other characters in the game.
Yeah, I definitely think that participation has a lot to do with the difference between violent video games and violence on TV. Like you said, you're actually participating in it, and most of the time you're actually causing the injuries or the violence. And also, whenever they show violence on TV, especially on the news and whatnot, it's in a very negative light. The people are committing crimes, and they're getting in trouble, they're getting arrested, they're, showing how people are hurt and affected by it. Whereas on the video games, you're rewarded for the more violence that you cause.
I think that there's a difference between movies and video games. Video games are make-believe, they're not real. In the beginning of most video games, there's some kind of warning or rating that tells them that it's not real and that they shouldn't be playing if they're under a certain age. So I think that constitutes for children to know that it's not real, and that's not how you should do things in life. And then on news and television stuff, it's all what's happening out in the real world. And movies is all based off real world, and I think a lot of movies are a lot more violent than video games are.
Well, I think that the video game, if you look at most video games, the entire thing is set up around killing people. Even in the most violent movies, it's not typical that the entire movie, every single minute of it, has killing in it. Usually there's some kind of story or plot behind it. With a violent video game, literally the entire thing is pretty much going through and just
Well, a lot of it's role playing. You have missions you have to go do. The killing's just something optional that you can do in it. Like you're out in the city and you're out doing these missions and stuff, and you can have the options to shoot somebody or not, which probably isn't a good thing, but it's not just based off of killing and violence and stuff.
The kids are going to go for the killing to win the game, let's face it.
Well, you don't win the game by killing people, you have to do the missions and stuff.
Well, I don't play them, so. But it does say that the 89% of the games are towards violent. More violent than not. So that's 89%.
But that's because that has to play that violence sells. So there's obviously a reason that 89% of the video games are violent.
And why do you think it is? That's what
because
sells.
that's what sells. That's what they want. That's what kids. So
That's my
that's
point,
what
but
they
who's buying
find.
it?
But they find it fun then. So they find violence and death and
But I think the
Injury.
parents are
Injury,
the ones that are buying them, so you have to.
Well, yeah, parents
A lot
should
of
regulate it.
times.
Parents should regulate it, but the fact is that they typically don't, or they don't do it. Maybe because some people view it as harmful and others don't, they kind of dismiss it as a harmless kids game. When if we really had some more consensus behind it or more evidence behind it, then maybe people could definitely be a lot more cautious about what they give their children, like know the extent to what it can do.
Well, you think those are probably the same people though giving the kids violent video games.
And the most at-risk kids.
Well, the ones allowing them to watch movies that maybe aren't appropriate and different things. So then it's hard to maybe pinpoint that it was the video games and not everything else that they're allowed to be exposed to because the parents don't really think that that's gonna.
Yeah, but nowadays they play more video games than they do watching TV. So what you do the most is probably what you're going to tend.
And there's probably other influences, but we're just saying, does this influence it?
We're talking about, video violence in video games, and that's...
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on. Does playing violent video games desensitize children to violence?
Yes, I think it does. They see it, they play it every single day in and day out for hours on end. And it's like anything. You just like, well, I probably can't say this.
Okay, what do you think, Sarah?
I think it does desensitize them. Just like you said, seeing things over and over, it just makes it a little bit easier, even if it's on, just violence in general in the media and on video games, I think desensitizes people. Like
the wars.
Yeah, I think that if I were to see someone dead, like I would be upset, but I've seen it on TV before and I've seen it in video games before.